This episode contains mentions of graphic or sensitive material that may be triggering. Listener discretion is advised.
Crime Junkie AF.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to the show made by the Crime Junkie, Ashley Flowers, for those who are Crime Junkie AF. I am here today with a very special guest who has not only been a champion for their community, but a staunch advocate for victims of domestic violence and families of the missing and murdered. She is the founder of Bury the Violence, a nonprofit organization that helps find missing and runaway children, in which she has helped reunite, you're not going to believe this number, 200 families in the Buffalo area to this date. She's a survivor, a mother of 6 children, and was also honored as one of USA Today's Women of the Year in 2023. That's kind of a big deal, representing the state of New York. And you can also catch her on her new radio show, Kicking Crime with Kareema. Please welcome the amazing Kareema Morris to Crime Junkie AF.
Thank you so much. I'm mega excited to be here.
Thanks
for having me.
So excited to have you. Our producer, Diana, has been talking about you for months and months and months. This is a long time in the making. And you actually are here for a specific case, one that Diana has been talking about for months and months. It's one of the most mysterious cases I've come across in a while. It's of a young boy who went missing. He's found years later in someone's attic, but there have been no arrests. And so you are the one who's really out there pushing for answers for his family. And we are going to get into his case. But before we do, I think it's really important to understand what brought you here. Because true crime isn't your background, much like me. So how did you get to this point? Like, what brought you into this world?
Well, I am first a survivor of domestic violence myself, and I know firsthand what takes place in the community when you need help. And then in 2013, we had a runaway, quote-unquote, situation in my own family. My niece, Lania, was a 7th grader, and she had went missing. And we went to the police department, Buffalo Police Department, and asked for help.
When did you realize she was missing?
So it was a Sunday morning, and I was at work in Niagara Falls Factory Outlet, which is, like 30 minutes away from the city. And her mother had noticed she wasn't there when her grandmother came home off the church bus, and Lania wasn't there. And so she had looked around the house and things like that. So then my sister calls me a Sunday morning. Everybody's just getting out of church. And I said, check her underwear drawer. She loves fragrance, so her smell goods were untouched. And
she's like you. I keep talking about how good you smell in the studio right now, first of all.
Yes, really. And so that's the thing with our family. And then also her snacks were there. So we knew something was wrong. And the police department told us that she was a runaway.
What makes them feel confident in saying that when they have no history with her? She has no history with running away, and they had her family in front of them.
Well, because they have the discretionary option. It's to their discretion if they want to look for a child or not. So ultimately, they label them as a runaway, and they use 40% less of the resources if they do take the opportunity to find that child.
If they're labeled as a runaway?
Yes.
Is that so? 40%. Where does that number come from?
It's just that's what you find out when you do your research. Yeah, and so first of all, it's up to that law enforcement agency's discretion if they even want to look for the child. Yes.
7th grade. I'm thinking about myself in 7th grade. Like I couldn't have taken care. Even if I was a runaway, I couldn't take care of myself.
And that's what's crazy, right? And so she was said to be at a party. None of us knew about this party because we turned to social media.
Oh, okay.
We started going to the social media platforms to look for information about what we can find out about her.
Okay.
But in the interim, as I'm getting off of work and my sister went to the police department and they denied her help, I told her to make flyers. And I was on my way. So we started from the North Bailey area, which is like coming from the suburban area, Amherst, into the city and passing out flyers of her to get the word out, right? And so we started our own investigation because we didn't have help from the police.
And how did you even know where to start? I mean, like that for you to be able to go into action like that, like, okay, let's make flyers, let's do this.
I didn't. I just knew that people needed to know who she was. So her face had to be where we could, duplicate this same message 1,000 times over. And so the pictures, so we just literally printed up a picture and put our phone numbers on it.
Did you get your first lead from the flyers? Did you get your first lead from social media? What happened next?
So this is really crazy. When we're passing out the flyers and I get closer to where she's at, right? They're saying, oh, that's 2:00. And I'm like, this is Lania. This is my niece, Lania. She's 13. And then they're saying, that's 2:00. So it's more, the closer I'm getting, not knowing that I'm getting, the people are calling her 2:00.
Had you ever heard that name before?
Absolutely not. So I'm like, what's 2:00?
Yeah.
And so I aggressively asked because now I'm frustrated.
Yeah.
And they said, that's the time she comes out, 2 a.m.
So they knew her.
They knew
well.
her. They knew her.
13.
Yeah. And so after 3 days, so I did receive a phone call from a government official, and they told me that I had to stop. I was going into other people's private residence without permission.
I mean, like I'd be doing the same. Like, God forbid anyone in my life go missing. Like, rules do not apply.
Yeah, I was on a ranch in my mind, okay? And I was just going wherever I needed to figure out what was going on. And so...
So wait, are they only contacting you because, like, you're going into places, not because they're ready to start looking?
Exactly.
Oh, hell
and
no.
so the conversation ended a little like this. I'm going to give you 24 hours because I'm doing what we asked you to do.
Yeah.
And then we received a phone call in the 23rd hour from a community member that there was a crime scene in the very place that we had asked the police to go and look.
Oh, no.
My niece was located deceased. She was murdered. She was stabbed. They tried to dismember her. They used a wonton soup container to pour gasoline on her body. And so she, and this is all in the discovery of the court case, right? Mm-hmm. And so it was her. And they took me to, they told me to meet them downtown at headquarters so they could basically retain me. But told me they wanted to ask me some questions. So I had to go sit in a room while they finished because I was, it was very overwhelming. And her mom wouldn't get out the car because we're two different personalities.
Yeah.
And so ultimately, when you have a child that's missing, you don't know why they're missing. Each case is different, right? And here you have my sister, her mother, who wouldn't get out the car. And this is something that you have to take into consideration when you're finding people. Everybody's not going to respond or react the same. Mm-hmm. Each case is different. In this case, when you hear that they're calling your child 2:00, and they're telling you that she comes out, you have trafficking. So she didn't run. Something kept bringing her outside on a regular basis.
Was she there the whole time you were looking for her?
Yes, she was.
Wow.
She was in the backyard of the house where they had killed her at. They had dumped her body in the back. So they went out their back door and took her body to the backyard behind their house.
Whose house is this?
The guy, Kareema Morris, who was no relation to me, we don't know this guy. He was 21 years old and he was married, and allegedly other people were involved in the homicide of my niece.
Really?
So the 21-year-old man that lived there and his wife, right? They were at this sad party, and he left with her
With
and
his
took
wife
him
or
to
with your
Lania, my
niece?
niece, and took her to his house where he lived with his wife and children. And that's where she was killed at.
Did he have a connection to her before this?
No connection. He's 21 years old. We don't know that guy.
Whoa.
Yeah.
That's unbelievable.
Mm-hmm.
And he was arrested?
Yes, he was arrested and charged with 39 years to life. And the defense attorney was the one really triggering my sister with talking about making it look like my niece was prostituted.
That was to say, I don't even know how. And this was, you said 2013. And when did it go to trial?
Oh, it was immediately. So we were done by like 2014 with everything.
So I feel like we've come a long way in like the vernacular, the way that we talk about trafficking. But I mean, even then, to say that she's 13.
Right.
I mean, she's also much young. You said he's 21, right?
21 and she was 13.
So it's also statutory rape.
Exactly.
So after this happened to your family, you, like so many of the people I've talked to, find yourself in a situation you never thought you would be in.
Never.
What did life look like after that for you?
Some people go through a grieving process. I can't say that I did. I was flaming on the inside, like something has to be done. This can never happen again. Kids can't just leave and nobody knows where they're at, and then they're just brushed off like it's a runaway. And I felt like literally everything that we dealt with in that time, we had to help people because this is what goes on and nobody has a clue of what to do. So we started navigating that space to help people find their missing kids.
How'd you even think about starting it? I always say there are certain people I meet in the world who see a problem and they say, oh, that sucks.
Right.
And then there's certain people I meet in the world who see a problem and they say, well, if I don't do something about it, then who is going to? And you are so clearly one of those people. Where did you even, what was your background before this?
I started as a debt collector, right?
Okay.
And then I was a retail manager. So I was at Solstice Sunglasses, selling sunglasses.
Okay.
And so, you got customer service there, and then you learn how to use skills from collection that help you to build information about people.
Yeah.
And so...
Which I love because, nothing that I'm doing is my, trained formal background.
Right.
But I think that's what's so great is I think that so many people want to do something bigger, something more impactful, but they're like, well, I don't know how, or I wasn't trained, or that's not my background. And I'm like, nobody wakes up one day and is like, I'm the expert. You make yourself the expert.
Right. Well, I have to be 1,000% honest. When people felt like I found my niece and like I found who killed her, they started calling me for help.
Like people within the community?
Absolutely. Yeah, like one of my first calls were, my daughter was murdered and we don't know who shot and killed her. And I'm like, okay.
And you're like, what do you want me,
Right, what do you want me to do?
They were so desperate for help.
And
you were a beacon for them in that moment when, especially, I'm sure they had the same experience you did when you guys went to police and they said, too bad, so sad.
It was like, I was still so fueled by this can't happen and this has got to change for our community. And I just was helping people and I just looked up and was like, oh my God, what's going on? And so we literally started out by giving my niece a walk for her birthday. She was killed Labor Day weekend. And we gave her a walk the first Sunday in June for her birthday, right? And then we were giving out scholarships to children in the 8th grade who needed to change, and they made that change.
Oh.
And so we had all this going on at the same time. And before I knew it, we were a full-blown out organization.
So it really was so organic. You didn't sit down one day and be like, I'm going to solve this problem. You just started solving it, and you're like, oh, I'm the only one solving this problem. Yes, it's us.
Yes.
So what does the organization do now? Like, how has it grown since you got that first call to what it is now and what it is your mission is?
So we started out as Lania Rose Foundation, and we wanted to be a basketball team.
Oh, yes, of course.
And we wanted to help the youth that way because that was the cute version of it, right? And then it didn't work that way because I had no time or interest because everything else
solving cases.
Right, and people were bringing me real life situations. And so eventually we evolved to bury the violence because even though we still do it in her legacy, but because it wasn't just about little girls that were running away, it became something way bigger with domestic violence, and I was already experiencing at the time she was killed. It became runaway and murder, and it's like we started out with the intent to help the youth and the girls, right, specifically. And it turned into people calling me with questions that I didn't know how I was supposed to answer it. And then we ended up resolving the matters and being there as a liaison between law enforcement, who we understood their response, if it was a response at times. And so literally people will call me to be liaisons for them and to help them solve things. And then we started advocating for them to get financed for their homicide funerals. And it just kept going and going. And I'm like,
the need was so huge. It wasn't just one thing, which is what you find out when you get really deep into true crime. It's not one problem. You can't point to one murder and say this is isolated. It's everything that led up to it and the system around us that contributes to it. And you can't stop or prevent or solve the thing without solving all of the problems around it.
Right, the intersects. And that's what we ended up with, right? So we ended up with everything that was attached to her case, missing and trafficked, labeled as a runaway, and then you have and then she was murdered.
You mentioned something kind of in passing that when all of this was happening and unfolding with your niece, that you were experiencing domestic violence.
Yes.
So you were. This isn't something that you had come out of. You were in the middle of that when this happened.
I was dealing with my quote unquote fiancé at the time, violating 2 of my children in the household, and I reported him within 2 hours of trying to figure out in my mind what to do, but not to alarm my sons for them to react. And then I have a bigger mess, right? We also lived in a domestic violence shelter prior to that when they were younger. And so I realized that we silence our kids when they come and tell us that this guy in our house did something to them. And they look at our kids like they're lying. And so I took them right to the professionals, and they sorted through it while I was strategizing how to get him back into the space where they could pick him up because we were in the suburbs and he had to cross back into the line in which he had my vehicle. And so I just spring into action because...
Which is clearly like your MO.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable.
And so we're working to house women and get them into safe spaces so their kids can have healthy interactions and provide services for them, like family therapy and things like that. Because ultimately, they've experienced domestic violence, and then you don't want them to come back and be what they've seen. They need to learn how to unprogram their mind.
Especially like in a time when they're so... Vulnerable and influenced. I mean, it's such formative times for them.
Yes.
But this is not the only thing you're doing. You have so much to go back to kind of where this all started. A lot of what you're doing revolves around kids who go missing.
Absolutely.
Can you talk about that work a little bit?
Yes. So in our city, we have learned that it takes our community to find the missing children. Because if we already know that law enforcement has an option, it's not an option for us. So we need to be that option. And so we had started out by canvassing communities with flyers. We put their information of their most updated pictures, which is absolutely unrealistic because you have kids with filters on social media.
Oh, yeah, I didn't even think about that.
You don't have...
Like, what do they really look like anymore?
What do they look like? And so then you have angles, right? And it's just all different kind of...
I'm like about to go home and make my daughter take a mugshot.
No, seriously.
Yeah.
So we canvass, because what we have to do first is really get the information. We grab the information. If intel was easier to get through law enforcement, we could take those IP addresses on those websites and stuff like the Instagram and those chat rooms that we could flip that information, skip trace who they're talking to, and probably
when you
find
say
them
skip
faster.
trace, tell people what you mean by skip trace.
Skip trace is a tool to flip information to find out who's on the other side of it.
Okay. And
so you have access to people's family members, jobs, last known residents. You find all of this stuff through skip tracing. When I was in collections, LexisNexis was my best friend. We use Ben Verified. So we take the Ben Verified number, we type in the 7 digits, and it flips back who owns it, who owns that phone number. And then it gives me a person that I can go and look for.
Gotcha.
And so it could be something as little as a phone number that can break a case.
Unbelievable. Have you guys put together a guide, or is this something that they call you and you give them steps, or do you have this like one pager that you're like, someone's missing, like, here you go?
So my primary objective is to get the information to the masses. And so we've put out there sometimes what to do and how to do it, but I don't think people are really watching that.
I think
it's easier to call me.
well, and I think people are like, oh, well, I don't need it. Like, I can't tell you. It always is. It happens to other people,
right? And that's the
and you can't
lie that we believe.
I know, and because you can't imagine that you're gonna need that information one day. You can't picture yourself in a world where your world's been turned upside down,
right? And
I think that is part of the problem. You know, we've got some very vigilant people, but then we also have a lot of people who are just like, I just can't picture that as my reality, and I'll, you know, if and when I need it, I'll come back to it. And then the unfortunate part is when you're in the situation and you need it.
You can't think.
You can. And again, especially depending on your personality, depending on how you function in times of trauma and stress, like there are plenty of people who just shut down and you can't think. You don't remember where you heard something. You don't even feel like you have the time to go back and try and figure that out.
And you don't, because sometimes it becomes overwhelming just thinking about the situation within itself. Yeah. And that's why we are strategic in divvying out the information to you and pulling it out. Because it's like an interview. You have to pull the information out so you can figure out what's going on.
So you got a very interesting call one day. You've gotten a lot of calls, but the case that you're here to talk about today is a specific one.
Well, the search for a missing 13-year-old boy in Buffalo continues.
The search growing more desperate each day.
He was last seen walking his dog.
He was going to a grocery store in the Broadway Fillmore neighborhood and never returned home.
The question, where is Jaylen Griffin?
Can you talk to us about getting that call and how this all started for you?
We had Jaylen Griffin, 12 years old, goes missing in 2020, August 4th, 2020. And he was said to be walking to the corner store. And his mom is talking about him having a dog, and he's walking to the store. He asked her, do you want something from the store? She says no. He walks to the store like a block away and never returns. 12 years old. My niece was 13. And so now it's pulling on the strings.
Yeah.
So we get this case, and we're trying to figure out how this young boy goes from walking to the store to disappearing. And you know, in America, nobody just disappears. And so he's in this community that, like every other house, is torn down. So it's impoverished. So we have this child that lives near the Central Terminal station, which is shut down. You got this huge train station that's not operable.
I was just going to say, August 2020, it's still,
COVID.
Like the pandemic was still fairly new.
Yeah.
We were still living in an alternate world.
Right. And so it was scary.
Were police helping out in this case?
No.
Yeah.
No. So we did end up requesting more from the police, more involvement, because ultimately at that point when we got this call to come in, so first there was the other organization that put up this huge billboard that he was missing. That's great, but that's in one area.
Yeah.
Everybody in the city's not accessible to this. And so my coworker seen that and was like, why isn't nobody talking about this? I'm like, I've shared it on my page. And she's like, well, what are you doing about it? And I'm like, what are you doing about it? I said, I got the memo, right? And so then the family reaches out, and then I'm like, we have to be more involved. And so the end of 21, coming into 22, the 2021, 2022.
He was gone. There's no sign the whole time?
No sign.
Were there tips? Like, what were people saying within the community all that time?
They were saying too much, but it was not productive because they didn't give us any pictures. Oh, he's at my house. Oh, I just seen him. Oh, that's my bro. There were no pictures. There was no evidence. Nobody ever said, hey, we have Jaylen Griffin over here. You could come, and hanging up. So there was nothing that led to a solid returning of Jaylen.
And what were you thinking in those early days? Did you think that he could still be alive? Were you concerned about foul play?
I'm very optimistic. I never want to speak death on anybody, right? Because one thing about it is our words have power. And so if I start putting that out there, I never know what power I put into it. And so I have to operate in my truth. We don't know the answer.
When you talk about going in, you said every case you forget what you knew before. It's a different family. It's different circumstances.
Right.
And I think people are quick to judge. What were the circumstances here? Like, why did his mom wait 2 days?
I know that she was fed up with the involvement that didn't, watching everybody else just say that he's not missing, he'll be right back. And that's another thing. He's the baby, right? So he has older siblings. So she eliminated her cousins and everybody else. Is he over there? That I do remember clear as day. I can almost, feel like she's saying it all over.
And you again, you don't think you're living in that reality.
No.
There's got to be an explanation.
Yep.
There's got to be, I'm not thinking of something. This is going to be, I'm going to be so pissed when he comes back.
Yes.
This is going to be something we talk about later.
Right. And ultimately that's what happened. So she eliminated every family member that he could have been with. She had her own process. And then it's like, okay, he's not home yet. And when we finally get on, we have to start from ground zero. We have to go back and do checks and balances. We have to treat it as if it just happened yesterday. And so we requested that polygraphs be done. And it wasn't that we had any idea that the family could do anything, but we still had to eliminate them. At this point, he's gone so long.
Did you, or I don't know if they knew this in early days or if this is something that you were the one who came and find out, did he ever make it to the store that he went to?
So we did have a young boy that was on the news interview right after then say he's seen him over there, but he didn't know he was.
Okay, sure.
Right. And so it placed him on Broadway.
Okay. I didn't know when you talk about polygraphing the family, because truthfully I was like, we have mom saying that he went there.
Right.
But
that was his intention. He was going to the store.
Yeah.
And so
now we know someone actually saw him there.
Right. And
which
another
gives mom's
thing,
story credibility.
Absolutely, right?
Yeah.
And so you always have people trying to tear down the parent like they did us. And we're a working family. We don't lay in front of the door like many people don't. We don't lay in front of the windows. And we don't hear our kids as they enter and exit the house all the time. We go to sleep. We're humans. And so ultimately, when we first got it, we went back to ground zero and we started canvassing again. We had flyers being removed in the community, which was very eerie to me. And so we
Did you figure out who?
It wasn't a big deal to some people. So we went back and we asked those same people that were volunteering and willing to post them up in our medical campus, which we have 3 hospitals and within a block range of each other. He could have been at the hospital and nobody knew he was missing. So we got that initiated again. Buried the Violence in My Organization in Western New York, missing and unidentified persons, also came together, and we started with canvassing the community because they found out that the neighbors didn't know. And so we had to start literally from where he was last seen, leaving his house, because that's all we know is he left the house and he walked towards Broadway. And so we had those canvassing again. We actually went and followed up on the tips and leads of where he was said to be that were given to police, the phone calls that were coming to his mom and sister.
And in this year and a half, had police changed their tune? Did they recognize that this is something concerning when they are getting these tips? Are they doing anything about it? Yeah. I feel like I know the answer. So
one of the tips were that he was in a trailer park, a trailer home.
Okay.
That somebody's dad had did something to him and took him in a truck or a van to this trailer park, right?
And did this person, do you know whose dad?
No. So these are the tips that were given. We took the information and we went with what they said. We took the basics. We're looking for a creeper van or a truck.
That's so vague.
Right? It's so vague. But what happened was they gave us an area of where he was taken. It was an address. So we went there. And
where he was taken to, not where he was taken from. Okay.
Right. And so we went to that area on South Park in Lackawanna, which is an outskirt of the city.
Okay.
So we go out to this trailer park and we're canvassing. And we see creepy stuff and we see things that are like, well, this doesn't make sense. Like, this is abandoned. Maybe he's in here. Could he be there? We see spaces underneath the trailer parks. Well, can we look under there? And so we had to go to the police and say, can you guys come with us in Lackawanna? Can you come with us? Because we need to see what's in here.
Mm-hmm.
And so this area is far past his house.
Not somewhere he's walking to.
Nowhere near it.
Yeah.
Okay. And so then we look across from this trailer park and you can see the I-190, the interstate, where another tip was said that he was at. So literally, we go right across the street until the street ends and end up on the side of the I-90. So we go down to this space that they say he's at, and we did our own investigation in which we took back to the police. We found some rolled up rugs in the trailer park that you guys were talking about. It's right over there. And so
you're almost getting like all of these tips and leads that are not like, right, you're not finding them, so they're not the one, but they all feel like they're clustered. And it's one of those things where there's got to be a little truth in there somewhere for it all to be circling around this one area that isn't the place that he went missing from.
Right. And so as we go backwards from that area, then you go to South Buffalo. South Buffalo, this one street, South Park, connects all of these towns. That area became very prominent to us. It became a question, can you guys go over there and search? We need you to get drones. We needed things we didn't have money for. And so come to find out, some of those things weren't available through the Buffalo Police SVU either. So we had to request dogs, we had to request drones, and then they could go over there and look at what we seen to be interesting.
Okay.
I did have the detective on the case at the time go with me into the field to go through those rugs and cut open, and nothing was found there, but they didn't take fibers either.
Okay.
So that was like they're working with us, right? And so we requested that we get the flyer of him missing with the Crime Stoppers on it. It took years to get that. It took, right. And so even with me calling, I had to get the police to push it through, the detectives to push it through. So we requested all these things. And then we have the visibility campaign that we had went to hire this lady to put it together for us to say, how do we ask people for help? And so Liberty Taxi Company helped us by putting it on the digital platform, his missing flyer, on the digital box that's in the car.
Was anyone saying they were seeing him, or were most of the tips you were getting later and later about something having happened to him?
No, we weren't getting anything new. And we were going on social media and still finding people writing about him up until 2023.
Oh, wow.
Jaylen's mother knew that something was absolutely wrong because his brother, Jawan, was shot and killed steps away from their home, right?
Older brother, younger brother?
His older brother. He was 18 at the time.
And is this after he went missing?
And this is after he went missing. So then you have him missing. He never returned. So this is reasoning as to why his mother just knew her baby was gone. He never showed up for the funeral. And that was 6 months after Jaylen went missing.
Was it connected in any way or completely separate incidents?
We don't have any information on that because Jawan is a cold case.
Yeah.
They didn't do an investigation that brought forth any information. And so in 2023, September 2023, Jaylen's mother's health declined and she transitioned. She passed away before any answers were found.
In either of her son's cases?
In either of the cases.
That family has experienced so much loss. There are other siblings out there, right? I mean,
yes.
She had other kids.
Joanne had 6 children.
Oh.
And so you have the Griffin children and then you have the Roberts children. So,
yeah.
But they're all hers because when people say step, it drives me bananas. Yeah. They're all out the same mother.
Yeah.
And so now here you have it that you have the baby missing and you have the 18-year-old brother shot and killed. Murdered. No answers. And so this is happening around Thanksgiving. And then his funeral's in December. And she would literally talk about, you know what day it is? And I'm like, no. And she's like, she's living on the schedule of the traumas and the tragedies. Oh, you know it's coming up the day that Jaylen went missing. What are we doing this year? We're bringing out our lanterns. And I'm like, this is really sad.
Yeah.
That the quality of life has become scheduling
around
the traumas.
Around trauma.
We speed up 2023, September. She passes away. She had a beautiful homegoing. And then his sister's birthday was April 12th, 2024. And there was some information buzzing around that they got a call that police were walking around with her brother's, Jaylen's, flyer asking if anyone had seen him in the neighborhood. Yeah, it was kind of like, well, what's going on?
And we do begin tonight with breaking news.
That breaking news out of the city of Buffalo. The search for a boy missing since 2020 has ended in tragedy.
Police announcing today they have recovered the body.
The body was found in a home on Sheffield Avenue in South Buffalo.
A missing persons investigation now turns into a homicide investigation.
Monday morning, Jaylen's grandmother called me, Joanne's mother, and said, baby, they around here looking for Jaylen in this neighborhood, and we need to know what's going on. And I'm like, well, they'll call us, right? And so I'm actually teaching a class of social workers about what really goes on behind the people that you have come into your chair. Know it's coming from trauma and extreme circumstances. Be empathetic, be watchful, and watch out for this, right? So I'm talking about all my jazz about the trauma that we dealt with, stone face, right? And then when I got off the phone with her, I felt so heavy. Like I came back and I'm in tears and I'm talking to them and they're like, what happened? And I'm like, nothing. I'm trying to figure out what's going on. But that was one of my cases and that was the grandma. And she's telling me that, yeah, so let's finish up here. And by the time I get finished with this, the detective is actually calling me at this point. And she's telling me that we are going to meet with Davana, Jaylen's oldest sister, and that the commissioner of police would like for you to come down to headquarters. And I'm like...
That feels significant.
And not to match, the feeling that I already had earlier, not knowing what it was, but there was a discovery made. And so when we get there, I see everybody in the room that I've been dealing with on the phone for years. And I'm like, oh, but why is everybody here? And they're like, so we could pretty much, why you're here. I'm like, well, Detective Benz did tell me that she was going to talk to Jaylen's sister, and it's about Jaylen. Okay. He was discovered in an attic by a maintenance man, deceased. And I'm like, what? You found Jaylen? So I'm like, you found Jaylen? Yeah.
You
deceased.
Found him.
Yeah, right. And so this maintenance man had called and reported that there was a body in the attic on the day of his sister's birthday, that they were, right. They were out there looking, and that was the discovery that we didn't know.
How did they know so quickly it was him?
He fit the demographic, Black, young boy, the only one in the system that matched it. And so what happened was the reason why they didn't reach out to us until Monday was they had put his request in for his dental records. And when the dentist came back to work Monday and confirmed that it was his dental record,
then they could tell you.
Then they could tell us what was going on.
So I have 1,000 questions. I want to know specifically, I think the two biggest ones are what condition was he found in, and what's the deal with this house? Because to me, it seems so simple. It's like, okay, who owns the house? Like, if you find a body in the house, problem solved. But it's not. I know it's not that simple.
So first of all, let's start with how was he found? So Commissioner Gramaglia of the Buffalo Police said that he was badly decomposed and he had to be there for a significant amount of time. I know what a couple and a few means, but I don't know what significant means.
Well, and that's what I was asking. That the fact that they knew it was him, we're talking 2 years,
3.5 years. He was
3.5 years. I would expect him to be skeletal if he had been there since. No.
Well, we don't know that yet. They're not telling us. So his autopsy won't be available until mid August.
Okay.
And that's for the family. And where we come from, it's like top secret, and you can't FOIA our medical examiner.
Super great. I'm dealing with some stuff here in Indiana, and I'm like, this is also kind of bullshit. Like, I pay the taxes, and at what point are you, like, accountable to people and not accountable to people?
Right.
But that's a story for another day.
And so through his dental records, they found out that it was our 12-year-old Jaylen Griffin. And this was right before his birthday, because his birthday is April 22nd. And so that was 10 days that, from the day he was found, right?
Yeah.
And so we just hosted his memorial, and we had these questions. We don't know how he got to this space, which is off of South Park.
Right. So that's my second question. Whose house is this?
This is let's talk about, the house is owned by a company that has people that are parolees. There are said to be sex offenders at this address. And this is like halfway house.
Okay.
But it's not state contracted.
Okay.
And so then, of course, the city goes through their own sleuth moment where they're looking on, they're researching the house. People are skip tracing, because that's what we do. And they're saying who lived in the house. They're putting names out. They're putting pictures out. They're going on Google, and, you can go to the Street View, and you could look on the camera in 2014.
You're saying all of the things that Diana has done.
Right. And so this is what I'm watching on Facebook, and which I just got to get off at this point, because it's overstimulating. Like, we're already doing our work.
Yeah.
And then we watch everybody else with their stories, but they don't know in the background that South Park, that was where he's found at, is 5 miles away from his home. But further down South Park, and we don't have these answers, is that trailer park.
The one that you went to?
Right. And that entrance off the I-90.
So you're back in this bubble where everything was kind of circling around.
Yep. And that carpet that they didn't collect, like, what was in that carpet. Like, my brain just goes there, right?
And because you don't have the autopsy report, you don't know if he was in the attic the whole time.
We don't know.
Or part of the time.
Right. And a significant amount of time isn't the time for me.
Have you or have the police talked to the people who were living in and out of that home? And there's got to be a lot of people.
And not only that, but who was monitoring those people? That address alone, 107 Sheffield, is the devil. You look at the reports and you see people throwing mattresses out the window. You see the windows open at a certain time on Google. You have all this data, and then you have the calls to look back at how many times the police were called there.
To that house?
Right, to that house. And then you have to think about, there were contractors that were in this house. He was in the attic. Like, who had access? Because this house is owned by a company. Were residents allowed in the attic? There's a million questions to go with your 1,000.
And how did no one know he was there? I mean, I have never smelled a decomposing body myself, but the stories I've heard from law enforcement is like, I mean, you can't mistake it for anything. You would think they knew.
The maintenance man knew. He knew that smell.
Is that how he, or was he, so that he went up to the attic because of the smell?
He went up to the attic because that's where supposedly whatever he needed to access,
and as soon as he was up there, he knew.
He knew.
So what is happening right now in the investigation? Because I would hope, wait, what do you mean you're shaking your head? Are police asking the questions that I'm asking about?
Who are they asking the questions to? They're not talking to us. Once it gets to homicide, it's a homicide case. It went from SVU to homicide, and we're locked out, right? And so then there's family dynamics at play, right? And so they talk to the next of kin.
The next of kin is his father, not his sister or?
No, his father's still alive.
Okay.
So he's the next of kin at that point.
And he's not in contact with any of
not
Jaylen's siblings? Oh.
Well, he does. And so he does still have So sadly, the 3 Griffin children that she had, there's 1 surviving Griffin from the mom's side. So they really don't have a communicative relationship. So he doesn't communicate with her about whatever's going on. If he's talking to them, if they're talking to him. And when I say they, I mean law enforcement. So we are locked out. We don't know. And so what happens is, by law, they do have right to get the autopsy results. And that's something
next of kin or his siblings? Okay.
So it automatically goes to them, but his siblings have to pay for it.
Okay.
But they do have access to it.
And you said that comes mid-August for them?
That comes mid-August.
And will they get any kind of, I know the police don't have to update them, but will they get any kind of?
Hopefully. We've been, and this is actually a thing right now. The oldest sister did receive a call that she's wondering, like, where are you? Why aren't you talking to me? What's going on?
Yeah.
She's calling for an update, and they're like, well, we can't communicate it right now. And I'm like, what the hell's going on? What is going on that you guys aren't talking to her? Because still, I don't care if you're not talking to his dad. If you are talking to his dad, the family dynamic is these children still want to know what happened to their sibling.
And even if even if you can't say exactly what you're doing in an active investigation, to know, is something happening? Are we progressing? Or is no one working on it?
Or are we doing cold case again?
Yeah.
The community deserves to know if there's a killer on the loose that's snatching kids and keeping them for years, and what happened.
Because that's the thing too, right? Like, he had no connection to the area he's found, the house that he's in. So when you talk, it is like quite literally one of those scariest scenarios where it is a complete stranger, at least it's what it's looking like, a complete stranger abducts him off the street on the way to or from the corner store, and he's found years later in an attic, and we don't know how long he's been there or how he got there or what happened in between.
And that neighborhood is working class neighborhood. Is majority white people that live there. Nothing like the neighborhood he came from. Who's seen him go into the house? How long was he in the house? The questions that everybody want to know. But this neighborhood has neighbors in the hood, and they have made complaints about this house. There's even a lawsuit from one of the neighbors from the damage that their house had from an incident that took place at 107 Sheffield.
It's wild. I don't know, right? Like, but it's wild to me that I don't think he could have been there the whole time and no one noticed when you have police coming in and out, or maybe they can and nobody's paying attention.
That's very unsettling that someone could take a kid off the street for 3.5 years and then he ends up in a home, like in a space, because I can't call it a home.
Yeah.
And so we're looking to honor him through his legacy. We started a petition to strengthen the laws of runaways, because just like we started out with my niece being labeled a runaway, he was labeled a runaway. How many more runaways do we have to lose?
Before we stop calling them runaways, when everyone wants proof that something happened, but I'm like, here's proof that they didn't just walk away.
Right. And ultimately at 12 years old, who's going to take care of you? You can't take care of yourself.
Well, and also, especially when you think about everything else that's going on, right? We talked about everything intersecting. Even if they, quote unquote, ran away, they left the home of their own free will. When you talk about the trafficking and the stuff that is happening around them, they're not necessarily safe.
They're not safe. They're not safe because you think about adults who are used in relationships and they're abused, right? They're adults, educated adults. So do you think that children can't be manipulated and brought into spaces where they believe somebody's going to help them and then they're violated?
Mm-hmm.
Like, let's really get to the reality. Like, every child that walks outside of their home on making that decision does not know what they're walking into.
That is the truth of it. So where can people find the petition if they want to support?
The petition is on our website, www.btvbuffalo.org, and that's BTV as in Bury the Violence. And it's under the About section, because we need to strengthen the laws in New York State to have accountability from law enforcement to the schoolhouse. We need awareness.
Is there anything else that our listeners can do to support the work that you're doing?
Well, we are a nonprofit organization. We're just not funded yet. And so we do have a space on our website that they can make a donation. But ultimately, we're looking for also outside of that, let me just make sure I'm making it clear. We do love people to help share our content because we never know how far it can go. The missing flyers, you have family that lives in other states. You have friends that live in other states. You're on social media. Share our content so the information can get out. We are actually going to start sharing our intellectual properties because if they're not calling us in and contracting us to teach them this, we need to get it out to the general public and hope that they utilize it. We're open to volunteers. They do have to be screened, which also costs money. If they help us, the things that it will go toward is helping us print colored flyers that cost money, getting skip tracing tools that are more so what we're used to, like LexisNexis and Been Verified just hit us for $37 last night. You know,
they'll come at you for every dime.
They'll come back and get you, right? And so, you know, those things that's what we need help with. So making sure that there's not another Lania, making sure that there's not another Jaylen, making sure that we can keep pushing that work out and other 200 plus families are served, that we have more people helped.
And it is, sometimes I think people feel overwhelmed. They're like, oh, I can't donate hundreds of dollars. To your point, it's $37 from Been Verified.
Right.
Like every little bit
right?
helps.
And so we do our safety and security kits. We were upstairs talking about our UV gel spray, pepper spray. So we do Securing Our Sisters where we provide people with safety kits. And this UV gel spray, people don't even know it exists. Ultimately, if I'm going to mace somebody to get away from them and it blows back at me, I did myself a disservice. But if they have this gel pepper spray and it hits that person and leaves a mark, it helps you and it helps law enforcement.
I love that idea.
So that's part of what we also do to help people who are in domestic violence situations to get away without using guns. And then we try to get them the personal alarms. And then we teach them to dial 911 and hang up. Because if you stay on the phone, sorry, law enforcement, but if you stay on the phone with that dispatcher, they're going to continue to question you and they know you're okay.
Do they actually get better response rates if you're not on the call?
Yeah.
That's fucking terrifying. The reality is terrifying.
Clues you can use.
Clues you can use. You need that on a shirt.
Right. There you go.
There you go. There are a couple other cases you mentioned. I know if you want to, we talk about those really quickly because obviously Jaylen's case is far from the only one that your organization is helping with.
People have been shot in historic parks, shot and killed. Joel Northrup was shot and killed after a basketball game happened. There were threats made. It's on Facebook Live. Joel wasn't even playing basketball at the time that this happened. Here you have substance, right? You have people in this space. You have everything you
Witnesses.
need on a live stream.
It was on a live stream?
He wasn't killed on live.
Oh, but the fight was.
Everything that took place around it.
Oh, my God.
So you can see the people, right?
Yeah.
And so how do we dare let this happen in Delaware Park where families go to the Buffalo Zoo right across the street? And Delaware Park has been staple for basketball tournaments, like they just had one with the former Buffalo Bills player, Stevie Johnson, and Team Joel actually won that. So I'm looking forward to them opening up these cold cases and Team Joel making another one that they find out who killed Joel Northrup. We also have Jalea Marrero, who is like so heart-wrenching. So Jalea Marrero's dad was shot and killed by her boyfriend, and he did it in quote-unquote self-defense, according to the statement that Jalea made with law enforcement. But you take a young girl that's a senior, and you put her in a situation where somebody shoots and kills her father in front of her, and then you ask her a question. Which side do you think her protector just got shot and killed in front of her? Jalea went missing soon after her dad was killed. And then she was found in a shallow grave.
Oh, no.
They haven't even started from step one of her dad being killed. Let's look at this as domestic violence. And a young girl had to watch her father be shot and killed, her protector be shot and killed. and then she leaves with that person, what would you do?
Truth of the matter is, listen to the stories you've told over and over again. Yes, police were asking her. Police aren't going to be her savior.
And that's why she's not here. So we want justice for Jalea. And if anybody has any information, please don't hesitate to reach out to Buffalo Police Department and leave those tips. They have tip lines. You can reach out to us and transmit the information over, because these are just two of the cold cases that we need solved.
And just to remind people, that website you're talking about, it's btvbuffalo.org.
Yes.
That's also where they can go to sign the petition to enact Jaylen's law.
Yes, it's the Safer Youth Act. There were other people looking to do Jaylen law,
Okay.
so we kind of back up and let family do what they need to do.
Okay.
And so, again, the main reason why we started was Lania was listed as a runaway, and then years later we have Jaylen approved that they're still treating runaways as if they don't have value and worth to be looked for. And so we need Safer Youth Act, that if a child does make a decision to walk out of their home, that they come back alive.
I know sometimes people can get overwhelmed when talking about making a donation because they're thinking, I don't have hundreds of dollars. But we literally just said that, been verified once $37. Like, it's the small amounts that matter. And so, again, I would really encourage our listeners to head to the website, btvbuffalo.org, to make a donation. Advocacy is always at the forefront of what we're doing here at audiochuck. So we want to make sure we're continuing to support that. So we'll also be making a donation to the organization. So please, you guys, join me in doing that to help continue on this work, which is so important for this community. Well, thank you for the work that you're doing.
Thank you.
I'm so grateful for the people like you who are out there who see something and do something about it. You've built, it's incredible the thing that you have built around you and for your community. And I encourage you guys to go, again, that's btvbuffalo.org. You can also follow Bury the Violence on Instagram and on Facebook. And please go make a donation if you're local. Think about volunteering. Yes. And I hope that this isn't the last time that we get to be together. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for having me. It's an honor.
Hi there, it's Ashley with just a quick update for you. As you know, Kareema and I spoke at length regarding the case of Jaylen Griffin. And on Friday, August 23rd, local media outlets reported that investigators confirmed Jaylen's cause of death was due to stabbing. Kareema has also informed us that as of this recording, Jaylen's older sister and siblings have still yet to receive a copy of his autopsy report. There have been no arrests made in the case, and it remains an active homicide investigation. Authorities are urging anyone with tips or leads to contact the Buffalo Police Department tip line at 716-847-2255, or you can call Crime Stoppers if you want to remain anonymous. Their number is 716-867-6161. Crime Stoppers is offering a $7,500 reward for any information leading to an arrest in Jaylen's case. You guys, don't forget to follow this show, add it to your library. Don't forget to follow Crime Junkie, and we'll have a brand new episode of Crime Junkie AF the last Friday of every month. But if you can't wait until then, you can also hear Crime Junkie Radio on the SiriusXM app for your 24/7 true crime fix. And you can follow me, Ashley Flowers, on Instagram at Ashley Flowers, and Ashley Flowers Crime Junkie on TikTok. I'll see you guys next month. Crime Junkie AF.